Hey everybody, welcome back to a non-sleazy episode of Backlog Banter in which I have been told not to be a little shithead when we talk about today's game of the day. The only game that I dress accordingly for, 2 videos on the subject in a row. Of course, we're talking about Marvel's Avengers, the game from Square Enix and perhaps Crystal Dynamics. I'm pretty sure it's CD. Because here's the thing, the game's got a pre-order beta out right now. God damn. My own respiratory system doesn't want me to talk about this fucking game. So I guess I'm really gonna, sit back for this one and let Tucker talk to all of you because he pre-ordered the game. He's locked and ready to roll. He played the pre-order beta. I spent my weekend playing Metroid Other M. Tucker, regale me with the facts and your opinions about this upcoming title.
Okay, well, I'm not going to be talking about my opinions on this upcoming title. I'm going to be talking about my opinions on the beta that I just spent 6 hours playing.
Well, I already have an objection. Keep in mind, folks, I'm very skeptical. Not because I don't like Marvel. I actually really like Marvel. I'm just skeptical of this model of game. But it's not a beta. This is not a beta. Nothing about this is going to change for the final game.
It's a demo.
It's not a beta.
Whatever. It doesn't matter. But that's what they're calling it. So that's what I'm saying.
So this is the final game. These are your opinions. Nothing you say here, you can't say, oh, but they'll change it for the final game. No, they won't. I promise they won't. They have less than a month.
Okay.
There's no way anything in this game is being changed. Just putting that out there.
All right.
Well, I'm going to clean my glasses while you
didn't go against any of my points. But you know what? We're going to talk about what I was going to talk about. Because I, as usual, prepared for this and took notes and played the video game. So I did pre-order the game. I got it through GameStop. I didn't get my code properly because my GameStop was stupid. So I had to go back and get my code. But I got it. I got it preloaded. Opened it first thing in the morning on my birthday, and that was a introduction to what a wonderful day. Start off the day with a wonderful game to play and continue throughout the day. And playing it just from the beginning, I knew that I would really be something that I was into. Right? I've been excited about this game, which you can see in our other videos on this topic, which will be in the card. By the way, I realized I was doing the wrong direction in one of our other videos.
You were in the right ballpark, though.
Yeah,
You're pointing up.
Upwards is where the cards goes. But I was excited for this game, but playing it actually gives me a lot more hope for it being a game that I am able to get into. Will be a game that will be successful, that will get good reviews, that will build community around it, because it is a lot more solid than I was expecting, to be honest.
Now here's the thing. I want to poke holes in you as you go, because what I really want you to do, what I want to leave this discussion feeling, is that when that open beta opens next week, that I'm excited to jump into it. So when you say that you are excited, but now that you're into the game, you feel confident in it, what weren't you confident about that was then corrected for you by the beta?
Well, what I was going to say is that, this game shows me that this is what I want out of a Marvel game for a couple of different reasons that I'll get into. So we can take this, Spider-Man.
Oh shit, it's a
2018.
bit.
And we don't even need it anymore. We can just get rid of it.
That's bold for a lot of different reasons.
Well, okay. I was doing it for the bit, not because I have anything against that game. I have platinum in that game. It's one of my favorite games. But I do think that this is going to be a game that I put a lot more time into because of its, extended life content rollout and such. But the thing that I was not really confident in was the characters, feeling the way that I wanted them to as a comic book fan, as a Avengers movie fan, because from the first trailer, everyone always thought, oh, these are kind of like MCU knockoff characters, right? The visual models don't necessarily they're sort of modeled off the Avengers from the MCU. It's a similar team. But that, on top of the fact that I kind of started agreeing with you when you were poking holes in the war table for the combat, you said it doesn't necessarily look as punchy, as satisfying as you were wanting. And both of those worries that I had in the back of my mind going into this were completely just wiped away. I do need to clarify that I am talking about my opinions on what is called the beta. It is a demo. It's not a beta. All right, we're going to get that out there. But I'm talking about my opinions on the beta. So this will be different in the final game because it is a longer form thing. because the story will start from a more solidified place. It'll lead up. I played the opening with the Golden Gate Bridge. I played the mission to the Olympia Archive with Miss Marvel and Hulk, and then another Miss Marvel and Hulk one that is somewhere in a snowy area. So 3 story missions, but they're not very connected because they're from different points in the game. And also because there's not a lot of introduction to some of the systems that will be obviously more fleshed out if you play the game in the correct format. And there will be more upgrades available. It'll be more clear how things are unlocked over time when you're playing the actual game and not the beta that is a bunch of different chunks. But the beta, as I said, did assuage me on my problems that Yes, I know. I'm pulling out the big words for I will embiggen my vocabulary. All right.
Oh, fuck.
Just for this
Look at that Miss Marvel reference.
But I really enjoyed the opening section with Golden Gate Bridge demo, where you're able to try out all 5 of the main core Avengers, obviously not counting Miss Marvel. And I had heard things from people who had played the demo last week that it kind of felt off balance, and you didn't necessarily get a full introduction to the characters. But I really don't agree with that. I think that the characters do have similar enough move sets in terms of light attack, heavy attack, holding left trigger and then right trigger to do a range attack, things like that, that it was easy to pick up and play each character. But they do definitely feel different enough in terms of their movement, in terms of their range, in terms of their power, that it was satisfying to be able to switch between each character. And when it comes to the combat, as I said, I was worried that it was kind of going to feel just button mashing and stuff like that. And it certainly does at first. But once you get past a certain point in the game and the game starts teaching you mechanics such as vaulting to go over enemies and attack them from the back, there is a parry, which I didn't really understand, but playing the actual game, I'm sure I'll understand it a little better. And there's also a bunch of different meters and stuff you can fill up, which I was unaware of. So the combat actually does have a lot more to it. And once you're able to unlock different move sets and customize your characters to the way that you want to play, I definitely think that the combat will feel a lot more satisfying and punchy because, well, it does, but it'll feel even more so once you're able to customize the characters to your own skill level and moveset opinion, like whatever you feel comfortable with. You got something to say? Nothing?
Well, I suppose I got a follow-up question with the combat.
Mm-hmm.
So let's step out of the fact this is an Avengers game for a minute. If you removed those characters, the mechanics, everything exactly the same, if you took away the recognition that this is a Marvel world and these are Marvel characters, would it feel fun? Would the mechanics on their own removed from the license be enough to make you want to keep going?
I think that's a tough question to answer because I think that the characters themselves lend so much to their movesets that it wouldn't really. Well, if you're saying that if there was a game like this and you had an Iron Man type character that wasn't Iron Man and a Miss Marvel type character that wasn't Miss Marvel, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, basically, because like looking at an Arkham or a Spider-Man, one of the metrics I looked at, or even Injustice, I think is a really good example. If you're playing Injustice and you remove the fact that these are DC skinned characters, so you had your ranged fighter and your up close fighter, your combo heavy, your tankier character, would this be a fun game removed from the context of this world that I love?
I would say so. I do think that there's enough to the combat and the upgrade trees, and I didn't really mess much with the gear customization and stuff like that, which I will get into a little bit later in one of my criticisms of the beta, because there are points that I do have to say this doesn't hit super high highs, but I do think that it's definitely a solid game. It's not a fluff piece. They didn't phone this in. It's not like people were worried that it was just going to be sort of button mashy randomness, but they definitely did put time and effort into making all the moves feel good and there's not necessarily a combo meter, which is something I wish that they had. I wish there was more of a combo based system, but there is enough going on in terms of you activating different abilities and teaming up with your teammates that I think that sort of balances that out. This is a different style of game. This isn't necessarily Spider-Man or Arkham where you're on your own and you can activate all sorts of different things.
So then if we swing the other direction, then knowing that these are superhero characters, these are characters that you love, does the game do a good enough job empowering you as these heroes? Because like we're talking about, speculating about Spider-Man, the way that maybe this game won't capture the feeling momentum of that character the way that Insomniac did. When you're playing as these heroes, did you feel that beyond it being a mechanically fundamentally solid game and a world you like, did the mechanics do a good job actually, in the words of fucking everybody who's ever written a game review ever, did it make you feel like Cap or Iron Man or these guys?
I do think that is where the game really shines, in my opinion. It's because when you pick up a character, you're like, oh, this feels a little weird at first. You're like, Miss Marvel has a weird arm grapple that she can pull herself to. Iron Man has his flight, but then you can sort of do a boost flight. There's a lot of different mechanics for each character that you sort of have to get used to. But once you get into a groove, which doesn't take very long, it really does end up feeling a lot more empowering. The reason I almost sort of hesitate is because this is a demo and you don't have access to fully customizing your movesets. I think that's where the game will really, really shine, is giving you the ability to try out all sorts of different moves and unlock new things and really get into customizing your character. That's where you'll really feel like you can connect to your heroes as your own. This beta is sort of just a vertical slice of different sections of the game, so it is disjointed in that way, and you don't grow with your characters, obviously, because it's just a couple separate missions. But as I'm saying, the characters themselves are where the game really shines. The fact that they were MCU knockoffs, as everyone was worrying, was just wiped out of my mind as soon as I got into the game. The characters have fantastic back and forth banter in the moment, and I love that in video games. RPG parties, Uncharted, all sorts of things. If you can have your characters doing stuff together, but they're communicating, it feels like they're building relationships, that is a very satisfying thing that I wanted from this, and they really, took it to the next level. Okay, all right, I'm going to look at my notes here. I've kind of just been fluffing around, but I really need to hone in on something. This game, I think, will engage me, hopefully engage you, and suck in other players. I do think it's important to recognize that the main draw of this is the fact that it's a superhero game, is that it's an Avengers game. You get to play as these characters, you get to explore this world. And that is where the game is its strongest. The combat is solid, but when it is put into this context of something that you want to find all the hidden secrets, you want to listen to the characters, you want to stop, you want to find the comic books, you want to find the audio tapes, because it's so interesting to explore and learn about, that's why the game will, I think, be as solid as it is, as much as enjoyable as it was to me.
So when you move outside of the combat there, are you saying that there's a lot of is there more non-linear exploration?
Well, there definitely will be in the final product. There's two examples of non-linear exploration in terms of you being able to go off the track and find secrets and sort of explore. In the snowy mission, there was the main goal where you had to go, but then you can sort of press up on the D-pad, and it does that thing you were worrying about in the war demo where it was like icons everywhere. But it's really just a ping. It's like Horizon Zero Dawn or something like that, where you can see, oh, this is where points of interest are. This is how far away they are. This is where the rest of my teammates are. And it only stays up for 2 or 3 seconds. So it's a quick ping that lets you get your bearings, and it really is unobtrusive. So that worry that you had from the war table, I can completely wipe away, because that's not an issue at all. It's not obnoxious or anything.
So if you're looking at the structure of a mission, it's mainly combat, but then there are supplemental elements to that? Okay. So is it a lot of, and it's going to sound reductive, but this is how something like Destiny is or whatever. Is it monster closet, little bit of traversal, monster closet, little bit of traversal, end of the mission? It's a sort of thing, or is there more of a dynamic between the different gameplay elements? Or is it really, okay, here's my combat encounter, here's a little bit where I'm going to be walking in the world, and then here's another combat encounter?
I would say, well, it's hard to say, because the 3 missions that I did play, the heavily scripted one in the opening Golden Gate Bridge section. I don't know how many more sections like that are going to be in the game. It could just be like, big story moment sections that you play like that. That's different, which is basically entirely combat and not much traversal at all. Then there was, I think the second mission going to the Olympia archive was kind of more of what you were saying, is that there would be sections where you played as Hulk in that mission, and then you switched to Miss Marvel later on, where you would be hopping from wall to wall and making your way through this forest, and then you'd stumble into sort of a more open area, and enemies would ambush you, and then you could explore after you beat them. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I mean, that's just how action games usually are formatted. But
well, I was just gonna say, just the reason I ask is because you were talking about how the combat is solid, but it's that feeling of playing as a hero and experiencing the world and finding the things that is really the highlight of the game. So I was just curious what the balance is between the combat that is serviceable, but the other elements that are really where the game shined.
Well, okay, so here's I have another layer to this explanation.
Okay.
All right, is that first level Golden Gate Bridge, super scripted, all combat. Second level Olympia Archive, sort of what you were saying, like, up, just traversal, combat, whatever, end of the mission. Then there was then you get to go on the helicarrier, which is called the Chimera, which is all exploration. You can go to each of the heroes' rooms, you can pick up audio logs, you can find comic books. There's not combat, you're in the helicarrier, there's not going to be enemies there. Although the harm rooms are in there, which is, again, all combat. That's like a danger room sort of test of your strength deal. And then there was the snowy map, which was more exploration than combat. So you could go off and explore and find chests hidden on this little puzzle that you could hop between things and find a chest up there, or defeat some enemies and then find a chest, like little enemy encampment. And there was platforming, quote unquote platforming, not like skill based, but you're hopping between things to go up to this thing that's sort of towering above the snow, and then eventually you can get to the main core of the mission, which you can go at your own pace to get there, and then that's more combat heavy. So I do think there's a really interesting balance of missions where some are more exploration heavy, some are entirely combat, and some are a mixture. So that definitely is something that you should keep in mind when you're considering the balance between world building and combat, is that not all missions are treated equally. Is that if you prefer one or the other, you're going to have to deal with, it being a mixture, and it's sort of being up and down in terms of which missions and how it divides out.
So you found yourself preferring those more exploration heavy ones?
I think I did, only because I'm more interested in the game because of its world building, because of the fact that I want to enjoy this take on the Marvel Universe and see why these characters are doing what they are. And it's definitely different because I'm being thrown into a couple random missions, right? If you start from the beginning and you get a solid story leading you through these things, it's probably going to be even more engaging. But I was trying to scrape together what I could from audio tapes and from back and forth banter. But yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And the combat got better as I played. As I unlocked new heroes, eventually you get the ability to play as Iron Man and Black Widow, who aren't involved in the single player content, but you can play as in the online missions and the harm rooms and such like that. And getting to try them really proved to me that these heroes are different. You do need to be considering what the heroes' powers are when you're playing them, and who else you have on your team. It was cool to unlock new costumes for each character. There's sort of like a little, much like the new game Fall Guys, where you can level up, or every time you level up, you can get a skin or I forget what they call it, but like a little frame for your icon, or just some items or money or whatever. But that was fun to do. I bet that'll be better in the final game once the progression is a little more consistent. But I'm just gonna do a quick. I'm really
a fucking flyover.
Yeah.
All right. A crop dusting.
Sure, a crop dusting of notes that I took.
Good, because I have other questions once you're done with that.
Okay. So my first note I took as from the combat, it really feels like a mixture between the Arkham games, and Jedi Fallen Order. You've got a lot of powers and you can dodge around enemies in a different way, but then Arkham obviously it draws inspiration from that, from the superhero combat and the circle, light attack, heavy attack, all that.
Now, can I ask you a question about that note right there?
Sure.
So Jedi Fallen Order was in a lot of ways reminiscent of the Souls games.
Okay, well, it doesn't draw from that.
Well, because that's my question. Even Jedi Fallen Order, which is a lot faster and a lot more forgiving than a Souls game, was a lot about reacting to your enemy's movements and playing a little bit more of a defensive style and looking for openings, looking for patterns, looking for parries. Is this a game that you can play aggressively, like an Arkham game, or is this a game more about reading your opponent and then reacting to what they do?
Well, okay, so I think I didn't necessarily clarify properly in my note, but the Arkham part is the combat, and the Jedi Fallen Order part is more of the way you traverse the world and back and forth banter. You had between Cal and BD and all that. So that's why I drew those comparisons, not necessarily because of the combat. But then the next note I took, and this is what really solidified the fact that I was surprised by how quality this was, is that this really isn't a cash grab game. They put a lot of work into the characters in the world. The characters are wonderfully animated. There's a lot of detail in the world, especially when you're in areas like the Chimera or the Archive, where you can sort of do, the opening sequence from Uncharted 4, where you can go through and look at all the things that Drake collected from his past adventures. You can do that. You can see in the Archive, which is sort of the Stark family collection of different Avengers artifacts, which is really cool. And on the helicarrier, you can go from room to room and sort of get a sense of the history of the Avengers team, which is really fun. There's lore tidbits everywhere. I mean, from all the different collectibles, which there's quite a few different types, including the comics and audio tapes and the codex, which sort of tracks the enemies you defeated and things like that, which is also kind of like Jedi Fallen Order. I'm pretty sure they did that in that game as well.
Question about that. You said there's a lot of tidbits. Are there any Timbits?
Is that a reference to that stupid snack that I haven't had before?
Timbits are little donut holes from Tim Hortons. Are there any of those you can find in the world?
I'm not sure. It could be like a late game unlock.
Because that was make or break for me, personally. Yeah.
Well, you could also eat Timbits while playing this game.
I could, but the problem is the Tim Hortons near me closed. It's more of a Canadian joint, So I was hoping I could virtually experience some Timbits. This is such a useless fucking diversion. What are you gonna say? Go back to your notes. I'm by the way, I'm formatting a lot of things I have to ask you. I've got a lot of questions for you.
Okay. Another thing is that another reason I'm excited for this is because while it did seem like it heavily drew from the MCU initially, it's a lot more focused on Inhumans, which haven't been tackled in the MCU, and AIM, which is another thing that hasn't been tackled in the MCU. So it's like AIM sort of fills in what Hydra was in the MCU, where they're trying to take over. They are rebuilding the world after A-Day. And so while you're taking them down, you're also sort of going against the government, which is interesting. And AIM is testing on Inhumans, and obviously Ms. Marvel has a personal connection to that. And there's sort of that's where a lot of the lore tidbits are, when you get a sort of a cutscene of an AIM agent testing on an Inhuman guy who's sort of being tortured. And it's this very interesting thing, much like X3, they're searching for a cure for the Inhuman disease, as it's called in the game.
Are you telling me you've forgotten about the great Marvel show that had about 4 good seasons before it got fucking atrocious, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? The Inhumans show that I believe is canon, but might not be.
Well, I think it is, but
in my heart,
mainstream.
In my heart, as a humongous Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, I'm very excited to hear that the Inhumans are in this game.
Well, yeah, no, that's basically the core of the game, the core of the conflict of the story.
Any Mutants teases?
Not that I caught.
Okay.
No. I would not be surprised if it was sort of a tangential aspect that was teased in the main game, but then it ended up coming as DLC content later on, sort of like a Rise of Mutants thing or whatever. But they're focusing more on Inhumans, and Inhumans kind of fill the same role as mutants. Let's be honest, they have like the inhuman discrimination and the inhuman disease and everything is quite a big parallel to what we saw in the X-Men and the X-Men movies, which people are more familiar with.
Very true, but I'd like to play as Wolverine. I have to be honest with you.
I would not be surprised if he comes eventually.
Honestly, that seems like a big like year 2 update to me.
Let's see, what else do I have? I kind of ran through a lot of this. One other tease that I got was there was a TV playing in the Chimera that showed Phil Sheldon from the Marvels series doing an interview for the Daily Bugle, which has a TV channel. A lot of interesting stuff there. A lot of nerdy shit that I wanted to get into, but this being a demo didn't really go much farther than that. But it was cool to get teases that this world is bigger. There are more characters that if you are a fan, you can recognize, which is something I was hoping for. So I'm definitely excited for that sort of stuff. But I think that sort of runs through a lot of this because I ended up mixing this into my initial stumble rant that I ran through.
Sure. So I got a couple of questions for you. The first one's going to seem really out of left field. Well, it's, I mean, not super out of left field. But Lego Marvel Superheroes is a game I fucking love. Mm-hmm. I played a ton of it on Wii U, and a lot of my time was spent jumping off of the SHIELD helicarrier down into New York and just fuck here in New York.
Yeah.
From the demo, is there anything commensurate to that? Like, is there a hub just full of collectibles and that you can just mess around in?
Well, there is, and that's the Chimera and the world around the Chimera. You don't have access to that in the beta, but we it's confirmed that is a hub area with rebuilding the helicarrier, building up factions in there, exploring the world around it where there are collectibles. You can find hidden secrets, things like that. So yes, there is, but I didn't have access to it in beta.
So how about the gear system? Because I know you had access to that.
And, I did have access to that.
Yeah.
But
talk me through it, because frankly, I'm seeing screenshots of like 18 different currencies and just all these different little things that I think look like they're just not fun. Yeah, the gear system to me looks not fun. So I want to either be, to use the word, assuaged of that concern or not, I guess.
This is my main complaint with this game and the demo. And again, as I've talked about in one of our past videos on this game, I've not played a game like this before. I'm not experienced in this genre. So I think my main problems with this game come from the fact that I'm not experienced in this genre of game with a lot of. I've not played looter shooters. I'm not used to getting a bunch of different stuff all at once and all sorts of collectibles that it's sort of hard to tell what does what. And that is my main complaint about this game. Is there's a lot of, whenever you hit a chest, whenever you open a chest, there's a lot of different kind of pickups. I'm not exactly sure what all of them do. Hopefully those mechanics are better taught in the main game and you're able to sort of get used to it gradually. But I'm not sure if I'm going to enjoy that aspect of the game or not. Fortunately, it does seem like that's not necessary to focus on. You can hold R2, I think it is, and it'll automatically put on the best gear that you have. Okay. So you don't even really have to worry about that. But obviously there is different stats, different things to do that you can go in and mess with it if you want to. And I might get into that if I'm interested to it organically, but when everything's sort of just shoved on me in a beta that's sort of a vertical slice, do we need to?
Sure. Thank you. We were. Okay. Thank you. Looks very good. Thanks.
Oh! Where'd that magic smoothie come from? That's crazy. But as I was talking about with the collectibles, is that they're there to appease the people who are used to this kind of genre. But as someone who's not, it was definitely overwhelming and a little bit uncomfortable to be ham-fisted, shoved all these things that I was not sure what to do with.
So now, see, that's fine. I'll be curious as someone who really loved fucking finding a piece of Destiny gear that was one light value higher and fucking putting it in and changing my shader and adjusting all this stuff. I like that. I'll be curious if I connect with that. But here's my overarching question for you.
Okay.
You've finished the story. We're talking 2 weeks past launch. You finished the story. Okay. Yeah. Now it's games as a service time. Mm-hmm. What is compelling you to return now that the story's done? You've found the collectibles, you've gone through the story, you've seen the characters, now you have persistent content. What is the drive to keep going?
I think, well, it's hard for me to say. As someone who's not experienced in the genre, I don't know what it's like to play one of those games over a consistent period of time. I couldn't tell you what I would want to come back and do.
Well,
I don't
here, let
know.
me say this. You can play one mission of Destiny, get one helmet, and know, okay, immediately the drive of the end game of Destiny is to get loot and to build up your power levels and to get legendary guns and do raids and fucking find stuff that makes you feel badass and empowers you as a player. That's Destiny's end game. What is Marvel Avengers Endgame? Is it running mission? Is it running the same missions over and over again because the game feels good to play? Is it because you can get new gear that's compelling? Is it because just the mechanics feel good? Like what is going to compel you to come back? Based on, of course, I know you've played. It's just a beta, but are there the harm missions you're coming back for? Is it the co-op online missions you're coming back for? Is it the combat challenges? Like what's the reason to return to this?
It's really hard for me to say. I honestly, I will be surprised if I play this as a consistent content drop game. I'm not interested in that. I wasn't interested in Destiny. I wasn't interested in Division. I'm interested in this game for the story, for the bigger content drops that end up coming with new heroes, new story bits. It really depends on what they end up releasing after launch. If there's a new mission type with a lore tidbit every week, sure, I might come back and play that. But if it's just going for high scores, getting better gear, I'm probably not going to come back to that because that's not my kind of game. But I will definitely feel like I've gotten my money's worth if they deliver me a compelling story with interesting characters and a lot of fun lore and collectibles that I can get, because that's the kind of game I like to play. And if it also has a tail on it that I can come back for free DLC or want to keep coming back for online co-op missions, which I do think are something that I would be more interested in. The fact that it is something that you can play with friends and build your own team and communicate in that way, I do think that might be fun. It might be fun to be like, oh, hey, there's a new mission this week where you can get this kind of gear. You guys would just pop in and play it. Sure, that might be something I'd go for, but I don't think I can't see myself being a consistent player just for high scores or for loot or anything like that, because that's not how I play video games.
So off of what you've seen of the gear systems or the recurrent missions, and that in itself is not compelling enough for you as an outsider to get you hooked on the genre. Because before I played Destiny, that wasn't the way I played games either. I guess my point is, we all have an entry point into a genre.
Yeah.
And there's some genres that just you never have an entry point into. Like if it wasn't for a couple JRPGs, I just would never give a shit about JRPGs. So I wouldn't be the right person to ask you about endgame JRPG context. That's not my thing. But at the same time, you know, is anything about this an entry point? Because it seems like for me, if a games as a service is ever going to get to you, this would be the one to do it.
Well, here's the thing. I don't necessarily think this is a fair question for this discussion, because this is a beta. I'm not getting introduced to these mechanics organically. I'm not learning how to upgrade my character and what gear does what. I'm just thrown into this. When I get the full game and am able to see how I feel throughout it, then I might be able to tell you. I haven't tried any other game like this before, so I'm not used to these mechanics. And if I was, maybe I'd understand these things better and be able to tell you that this is a good version of those kind of games. But I mean, I can't. So I can't tell you what's going to pull me back. It totally might. It might be my entry point into the genre. But the beta was not my entry point into the genre because it's not a good example of what these games can do in terms of a long-term commitment and collecting your gear and things like that.
I'm very excited to play the beta because I don't agree with what you just said. But that's why I'm really interested in your opinions in this game, because you're coming at it as a player who it sounds pejorative but doesn't understand what this type of game is.
Yeah, no, I don't. I will admit that.
But I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it's very interesting to hear the way you interpret a game like this, because it's just so fundamentally different than the considerations I have for it. Because for me, hearing what you said, that all sounds like, okay, you know, those are the reasons I want to play Miles Morales this year. For that story experience and for the lore and for feeling the way the character feels, right? For me, the considerations are more about, okay, what are they doing to compel him to come back? Is the gear system suitable? Is the setup of this compelling? Removing these superhero mechanics, is this a fun enough game that I want to play the same content over and over and over again in the interim between the new content drops? Is that compelling enough to push me through the next, big update or whatever? Those are the considerations that I think really matter for this genre in the long term. What you've done, I think, really nicely is sold me on the fact that I do, at minimum, want to play the story content, because I am compelled by the things you've said. But like we referred to in our last discussion, for me, I don't think that makes the game a success, because Crystal wants me here for months. And if we're both here for 2 weeks, we get a cool discussion out of it. We get a cool. I don't know how long the campaign's gonna be. Maybe 15 hours. Cool, like 15 hours of single player content. That's great. But that's not why I'm supposed to be here. So I'm very intrigued by the things you've told me, because now I know at least I'm not gonna walk away from this game disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
On a personal level, I'm gonna get at least what I'm looking for out of it. But what I'm most interested in this game is if it succeeds beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely valid. I'm not the one. Maybe this wasn't necessarily the format that our discussion should have taken, because I can't sell you on those things that you are curious about, because I can't tell you how this stacks up Destiny or Division or anything like that. I can't tell you if these are good versions of those mechanics. I can't compare them to anything else, and I have no idea what most of them are. But from what I played, and from the perspective of someone who is interested in video games, I do want to play this game because it's a compelling narrative, and if I'm hooked, that's all the better. But if I'm not, that's fine by me, because that's not why I play video. Well, we discussed all that. This is going a long tooth and nail, as they like to say. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we need to get all our thoughts bubbling in a cauldron.
Well, of course, this is not the first or last time we're going to have this discussion, because we're on the precipice of the public beta, and we will do another discussion after I play the game. We certainly will. You can't escape from that one, right, audience members. You also cannot escape from the fact that rumors are pinning Rocksteady's Suicide Squad game as a Games as a Service title.
Oh, interesting. I haven't heard that, actually.
Mm-hmm. The Eurogamer reporting before this game, because people have known that Rocksteady is making a Suicide Squad game for a long time. And the timing of the announcement, everything is lining up with these Eurogamer reportings being true, and that includes it being a Games as a Service title. So we're gonna have this discussion plenty more with a universe I'm far more invested in, even though I am a Marvel fan.
Well, that'll be fun. We can honestly get the back and forth of each side. I think that'll be fun. But this is not the time for Rocksteady Suicide Squad. That is in 2 weeks when it comes to DC Fandom, which we have plenty of content planned for, and I'm excited to do some discussions about stuff, because I have no idea what it is or what they're going to show, and I'm excited to be surprised. But any more questions you got for me? Any final moments?
Yeah, I guess my last thing is, so you got the core Avengers, right? Are there any teases, like, is my boy Vision in here at all? Even in story cutscenes, did they show anyone that isn't playable?
This is the beta. There weren't really cutscenes. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you about that. I don't think that's necessarily fair. I think they would also hide that for the final release if it were to be in the game. The teases that we got were about building the characters that we know, and I didn't even see story content with Iron Man. I mean, except for the opening section. Like, there was no interactions with other characters. I mean, really, it was just Bruce Banner / Hulk, Miss Marvel, and then Maria Hill, Jarvis, and Nick Fury were also involved in this. So that was the circle of characters that I had. Although a pretty small group, I was very satisfied with how they bounced off of each other, how they ended up building their personalities and their histories and their interpersonal connections over time. And the cutscenes that I did get between mostly just Bruce Banner and Miss Marvel, I think, proved that this could be the story content that I'm looking for. And hopefully there are surprises. I mean, there probably will be. I don't see them as a game that is planning to be an expansive universe, right? There is that tease of Hawkeye being on the picture of the Avengers even before he was announced. So hopefully there will be more of it. I would expect there to be. I love Vision. I would love Vision to be in this game. Holy shit, that'd be awesome.
I want a whole fucking Vision free DLC where it's just a Tom King storyline.
That would
Oh, I
require
want.
a lot of setup.
I want it just completely out of context. You just
Just
let up Division missions in a fucking suburban neighborhood. Completely removed from everything.
introduce his entire family. Mention Scarlet Witch, but don't have her playable. Just
No.
throw Grim Reaper in there. Don't mention Wonder Man. Just have what's the Ultron kid's name? I don't even remember. But have him show up without Ultron being a thing. Great.
I want it to start out of context with you killing the neighbor, and then it flashes back to the beginning of the story, and then you play from there. That's what I want to have happen.
Interesting. I don't see that being very fun. I don't think there'd be very many mechanics you could do. They usually just sit in their fucking house for like the majority of it.
You could phase through walls, you know? That sounds fun to me.
That would be fun. Vision would be a very broken character. I actually don't think they're going to add him. The fact that you can fucking phase, he could just go through a mountain. He can just go through any doors. And maybe that's a cool mechanic if they can work it into his moveset. But otherwise that seems like it might break the game in unintentional ways.
Sounds like a very Anthem-esque problem.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
you don't know what that means. You're a fake fan.
I think that I said to shut you up. But I think that about does it. I think that does it for this discussion. I'll see you guys later. Follow our Twitters down below. I'm not doing the whole fucking thing.
Use glass straws. Save the turtles, even if they don't work. I'd rather have a straw that doesn't work than a turtle who can't breathe because it was dumb enough to eat a straw. Save dumb animals. That's the bottom line.
All right. Sounds good to me. We'll see you guys later. I'm worried about this video, you know? I'm worried.
Why are you worried about this video?
Because I feel like even though you haven't done anything, you're still gonna be a little bitch about this game.
I am. I'm very skeptical. That's why the ball's really in your court for this recording session, because you have to fucking convince me.
That's why I'm worried, because you're a stubborn little bitch.
See, but all you have to do is be your usual witty self. Tell me why.
You're not even paying attention to me. You're fucking working on something else while you're trying to convince me that I'm cool.
All you gotta do, motherfucker, why is this picture not opening properly in GIMP?